Yo, what's happening, guys? It's GM Cody back with another video this week and another game overview this week. Talking about another lost and forgotten game. And this week we're going to be looking at one of the most underrated science fiction role playing games, in my opinion. Doesn't get brought up very often, and when it does, it's kind of, I usually get people rolling their eyes, or people are like, oh, I love that game. And that's Alternity by TSR. Of course, this was one of the last games made under the TSR brand. But by this time, Wizards of the Coast had purchased TSR probably about a year previously. Of course, at the time, I wasn't aware of that. And I bought this game when it first came out back then. I was really into science fiction just as much as fantasy back then, and any kind of good-looking science fiction game I would pick up. And I definitely picked this one up, and we played the hell out of it back then. And then I kind of forgot about it, to be honest with you. Other things got in the way. We started playing other games, and I just kind of forgot about Alternity. But recently, people have been bringing it up a lot in discussions I've been having in live streams and such. And it got me thinking about Alternity again, and whether it's still a decent game and does it hold up, and I don't know. So we're going to take a look at it tonight. I was reading through the book before, of course, to re-familiarize myself with this game, and I think for the most part it does. It's a pretty interesting game, and it's a game I would definitely like to make a return to and see how it plays, and see how it is in action. But before we take a look at Alternity, the Player's Handbook tonight, I wanted to say I had a couple people this week reach out to me through my email, viewers of the channel, and just wanted to talk to me. Apparently, I struck a chord with them, and they were very interested in having a conversation with me, and I was more open to that. And one of them, of course, is playing in my Dune game, which is Phil. And another one was Jason. He just wanted to have a conversation with me. And so I think that was Sunday. Me and Jason had like a 3-hour conversation just talking about old school D&D and our similarities and our experiences. Even though Jason's quite a bit older than me, we had a lot of common, and it was really interesting to hear each other swap stories and stuff, and really cool. I did record that conversation because I thought it might make for, a good video. Unfortunately, it did not record right. The audio is all over the place, and the video got skewed. Everything went wrong about that recording that could go wrong with it. And I tried to save it. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be able to save it. It might just be too much of a hassle, but thank you, Jason, for reaching out, and I really enjoyed the talk. And hopefully me and Jason are talking about having him back on and maybe talking about something, a specific topic that he wants to talk about, and we can live stream it or record it or whatever. But that's really cool. That really flattering, actually. Just really crazy that anybody would want to reach out and talk to me. And it's great to, hear so much positive response for the channel. I'm just doing it, man. I think it's great that people are responding to it. So that's really cool, guys. I really appreciate it. And other than that, I don't have too much of a preamble tonight. I don't have really anything else on my mind. So we're going to jump straight into looking at the Alternity Player's Handbook. All right, Alternity, science fiction role-playing game, Player's Handbook. Now, back in the day, like I said, I bought this game when it first came out. I did have a couple books for this. I had the Player's Handbook, I had the Game Master's Guide, which I sadly don't have anymore. And I had I had one of the supplements, but I don't really remember which one it was. But the only thing I have left of that is the Player's Handbook. And I think I actually would like to acquire some of these other books for this game. I would kind of like to revisit this game because, like I said, we did play it a lot back in the day, and I had a lot of fun with it. And I think it'd be interesting to revisit at some point or another. But anyways, Alternity was essentially, well, what most people saw Alternity as was the science fiction Dungeons and Dragons, which is kind of right and kind of wrong. So for one, Alternity doesn't share many similarities with Dungeons and Dragons. It is definitely its own game system, own unique game system, as we'll see here. You can also the other interesting thing about Alternity is you can definitely see the progression into the D20 system. You can tell they were already starting to think about the D20 system and probably third edition Dungeons and Dragons, and you can definitely see a lot of the inspirations. This is almost, even though this is nothing like the D20 system, you can still see a lot of the prototypes of the D20 system in this game. So that's interesting to me. But overall, it is its own game. And unfortunately, I don't think it did very well when it first came out. I didn't know anybody else that played it or had it, and anybody else that I brought it up to back then, or even years later, just kind of laughed at me for bringing it up, saying, "Oh, I never played Alternity. That looked like a dumb game. It was just D&D in space." When really it was a lot more than D&D in space, as we'll see. So let me zoom in a little bit here. So Alternity introduction. So, well, I did want to say, so this is a generic science fiction role-playing game. So it was meant to be adapted for any type of science fiction universe you wanted to play in, sort of. So, you could play like anything from like cyberpunk, you could play a hard sci-fi setting, you could even play, something very like far future, kind of Star Trek or whatnot, or you could do all kinds of different things with it. That was the idea, anyways. They did make two settings for this game. Star Drive, I believe, was one of them, and the other one was, damn it, I can't remember the name of it now. I'm just going to Google it real quick, because I can't remember. Dark Matter, I think, was what it's called. Alternity RPG settings. Dark Matter. And also, I'm glad I did Google that, because I forgot that they adapted Gamma World for Alternity. I always forget about that. And we did play the Gamma World adaptation of this. So I guess that was the only campaign setting I played for Alternity. But I never looked at Dark Matter. I never looked at Star Drive. I don't know if those were any good or not. I've heard a lot of good things about Dark Matter. Of course, that was designed by Monty Cook, the famous game designer that did a whole lot of really good stuff. But I never looked at either one of those, so I have no experience with them. But at some point, I would like to take a look at them for sure. But tonight, we're just looking at the player's handbook, right? So introduction, what this game's about, role-playing, all that good stuff. I will say, I do like the art in this game. It's definitely very late 90s. It's got that techno-noir vibe going, which was really cool to me at the time. Being a teenager, I thought it was really cool. So one interesting thing about how this player's handbook starts off is it has fast play rules at the very beginning of the book. Which I always thought was interesting. Why it had like this basically like quick start rules, like you would find in pamphlets back then, and of course now like free online. They presented this as chapter 1 of the book. I'm not really sure why they did that, but here it is. It's basically the quick play rules for Alternity, and kind of explains the basics of the system, which we can kind of talk about, I guess, since we're already here. So the basic mechanic of Alternity was it is a roll under system. You roll a d20 and you're trying to score equal to or under your skill rating or your attribute rating, whatever may be the case. The distinct thing about the Alternity mechanic was you had situation die. So you can see this situation die scale, and it usually started at a +0. If it was untrained, it would start at a +4, I think, D4, and you would go up and down depending on the difficulty, and that's how much steps of die you would add. So you would add a D4 or a D6 or a D8, or subtract a D4, D6, D8, D12 to your D20 roll to get a grand total. So instead of trying to beat like a difficulty number or subtracting from your base target number, you're actually subtracting from your roll based on the difficulty. So that was an interesting mechanic at the time, and I quite liked it at the time, and I think I still do, actually. The other thing that was basic mechanic that's different from this, from D&D, is, of course, this is a skill-based system, which is very different from AD&D, which was still around at this time. But kind of similar to the non-weapon or the non-weapon proficiency system. I think that's where this came out of, really. So if you had a broad skill in something, whatever your rating was in your attribute equal to that skill was what your total was for that skill. Now, if you had any ranks in a specialized skill, you would add that total to your attributes. So say you had, I don't remember, like, let's see, let's just find some skills here real quick. So say you have, sure, sorry, looking for one. Okay, here we go. Dexterity skills. Acrobatics. Okay, so acrobatics would be under dexterity. That's a broad skill. And then you would have specialized skills under that. So if you took ranks in, say, Daredevil, then in your dexterity's 10. And you took one rank in Daredevil, well, your Daredevil rank would be an 11. So that's how that works. And of course, the more ranks you have, the more it would go up. The other thing that was different is you had gauges of success based on your score, and you had, what were they? They were good, ordinary, good, and amazing success. And let's look here at the example, like quick start characters. So if you look at the quick start characters here in the skills, you see like athletics, and it says 14, 7, 3. So 14 would be ordinary, 7 would be good, and 3 would be amazing, right? So if you rolled equal to or under any of those numbers, it would tell you how well you succeeded. Very different system from any other I've ever seen. It did require a little bit of math up front, because essentially what you did is you took your base score and your skill, cut it in half for your good score, and then cut it in half again, rounded down for your amazing score. So it took a little bit of math, but not really. I mean, you could add that up pretty quickly, right? And of course, you had untrained scores that were equal to half of your ability score if you had a skill, if you did not have a skill in something. All right. And that was pretty much like the basic mechanics of the game, and very interesting mechanics too that worked pretty well. So on to hero creation. So the first thing, of course, the first thing that Player's Handbook guides you on is develop a hero concept, then choose a species, and they have some example species here. Now, the thing I thought was interesting here is this is supposed to be a generic science fiction role-playing game, but they have these set species that imply a setting. Now, I didn't think much of it at the time. I just thought, oh, cool, aliens. But it is a little weird now, looking back on it, when you think they would just have like guidelines for you to make up your own, or I don't know, whatever. It's fine, it works. And the aliens are pretty cool. I always enjoyed the species they present to you. So they had the Frawl, they had the Mechalus, which I guess are like cybernetic humanoids. They had the Session or whatever, these winged dinosaur-looking guys. They had the TSR, which were always my favorites when I was a teenager. I would play these guys for whatever reason. They had the Warrens, which are kind of like Wookiees, like werewolf kind of Wookiee dudes. And I do remember these characters that they used like really primitive technology. They preferred to use primitive technology, and I always thought that was interesting. So anyways, those are the species, the base species it presents in the player's handbook. I kind of get the feeling that these species are supposed to be from the Star Drive campaign setting, and so they just put them in the player's handbook. So it could be like the generic like baseline, and then of course in the future they were going to release future supplements, and they were hoping they could release more aliens. Also know I found out today there's an aliens book too, so maybe there's a whole, I guess a whole plethora of aliens. And even if you wanted to make up your own, it probably wouldn't be too hard to do, and these would give you a good example of how to make up your own. So all good, I guess. Then the next thing you're going to do is choose your career. And your career is basically your class. They do give you a few bonuses, but for the most part, what they're going to determine, what your profession, your career is going to determine, is what skills you can buy, what class skills you have, and what skills are not class skills. Essentially, kind of like in the D20 system, class skills are going to be cheaper to buy. And non-class skills or open skills, as they call them in the game, are going to be more expensive. They do have ability requirements for, the professions, just like in D&D. You do not roll. Okay, so I do want to state that, I think I already said this, but the professions do have some bonuses and special abilities, but they're very slight. They're not over the top crazy, so like the combat specs action check is, his action check is increased by 3 points, which we'll talk about an action check when we get to, doing actions and stuff. They get a free specialty skill from those listed under these broad skills. They're all combat skills. Stuff like that, so like the diplomat gets a bonus. Action checks scores increased by 1. A diplomat starts with contacts or resources described in the Game Master's Guide. All right, so it's very small advantages, right? So ability scores. You do not roll for ability scores in Alternity. I think you get 60 points to distribute amongst your abilities. Yeah, 60 points. You have 6 scores, and you cannot put any more than 14 in a score, I believe. And of course, it has to meet the requirements for your species and your profession. And the ability scores are look pretty familiar if you've played D&D before. They are strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, will, personality, and that's it. So very, very familiar to D&D. The only thing that's different is will and personality. Will would be wisdom, the equivalent of that, and personality would be the equivalent of charisma, of course. Determining options. So there is some optional character creation stuff in here. They have mutations in the back. They have psionics, and they have perks and flaws. And they also have cybernetics. So it just the game master has to determine up front whether those optional rules are going to be allowed, and if so, then you can choose to be a mutant or have cybernetics or have psionics. So you get some free broad skills depending on your species. So humans get more skills to start off with. They start off with 6 free broad skills, and here's all the skills they get. And you can see each species has a certain amount of the same kind of thing. Humans also get a bonus of 5 more skill points at character creation, and your skill points are determined by your intelligence score. So if you look here, it'll tell you whatever your intelligence is, that's how many skill points you get, and then you get a certain amount of bonus broad skills as well. And these do not count towards your starting broad skills, I believe. So skills, the way skills are purchased is if it is a non-class skill, it's called an open skill, and it's cost however much it says it costs in the skill list, which we're about to look at. If it is a class skill, it costs 1 point less, is I believe how it works. And this is some cool art here. I'm not sure who all the artists were in this game. I know Todd Lockwood was one of the artists, and I'm pretty sure he did the cover, which is a cool cover. But I'm not sure who all the other artists here are. And I would assume that the old guard of TSR, you know, the old TSR artists are gone, except for Lockwood. I think he came on, you know, at the tail end of that. And these are probably, you know, new hires of Wizards of the Coast or existing staff members from Wizards of the Coast. Right, so you do get a thing called last resort points, which I'm assuming are kind of like fate points. I really can't remember. I forgot all about this, actually. But it's determined by your personality. Actions per round, how many actions you can take per round, is equal to your constitution plus willpower. Action check, which is basically determines who goes first in a combat round, essentially. And your action check is determined by your dexterity and intelligence score divided by 2, rounded down. And of course, like any other skill rating, you're gonna determine your ordinary, good, and amazing trait in that. So your base score, half, and then half again. Movement rates and all that. Damage is interesting in this game because it's not hit points like D&D, but it kind of is. So you have a damage track system. You have 4 different types of damage. You have stun, wound, mortal, and fatigue. And we'll look later in combat, but basically, stun damage heals up after a scene is done. Wounds and mortal wounds can only be healed through medical attention or whatnot, and fatigue is I think goes away after a scene as well, or when you rest. And so when you take a certain amount of damage, I think you also get penalties to your like checks and stuff. We'll look at that later when we get to damage. I can't quite remember. Of course, you do get a damage bonus based on your strength. And here's that right here. I think that only applies to, melee damage. Heroes in action. And I do really love the art that follows all these like chapter headings. It's really cool. Again, very edgy, late 90s noir kind of stuff. But that's, it was definitely a product of its time. So they're talking about scenes and all that good stuff, which doesn't really, I don't think you guys really need an explanation of. We already talked about, how to make, or already talked about the situation die steps, the die step mechanic. So I don't think it's really worth talking about again, but here's the die step chart. So you do have resistances. Of course, those are basically like your saving throws. And those are based on your ability scores. Here it's talking about the different types of damage. So if you take full stun damage, you're knocked out. After all the hero stun boxes, of course, if you take all your stun boxes, it becomes wounds. For every 2 additional points of stun damage a knocked out hero suffers in a single attack, he or she suffers 1 point of wound damage. There you go. Wound damage is more serious. Represents injuries that are cause lasting harm to the body. For every point of wound damage your hero receives, mark off 1 box on the wound rating, blah, blah, blah. Secondary damage, of course, for every 2 points of wound damage a hero suffers in a single attack, he also suffers 1 point of stun damage. Okay, yeah, here's what I was talking about, where you get effects from taking damage. Now, these are optional, so if you take a certain amount of damage, you become dazed, or it can become knocked out or heavily wounded. And mortal damage is even more severe, and it's kind of the same thing, just worse. And fatigue damage only happens if you get in a situation and you would become fatigued. And so your GM would tell you to make a stamina endurance check, and if you fail, you might take some fatigue damage, and you become knocked out or dazed or whatnot. Recovery, of course, stun damage. All stun damage is fleeting. It disappears at the end of a scene. Wound recovery. Wound damage doesn't go away by itself. It affects the character until he receives a medical aid or until he rests long enough to heal the damage naturally. See natural healing. Mortal damage. Not even a long rest will help a character who has suffered mortal damage. In fact, resting without being treated will eventually cause his condition to worsen. So mortal damage is like a very, very grave. It's mortal damage. It's mortal wounds. Mortal damage can only be repaired through the use of medical science surgery skill. A dying character, one who has at least 1 point of mortal damage, so I guess basically you're dying if you take any mortal damage, will remain in that condition until the damage is repaired or until he dies. This is all the movement rules, which is, not all that interesting. Encumbrance and all that good stuff. Attacking with 2 weapons. Impact damage, surprise. I'm not really sure how surprise works in this game. Let's look. At the start of a scene, if one side or the other is in a position to surprise his opponent, the game master calls for awareness and intuition checks. Okay, that makes sense. Skills. Here we go. Into skills. We already talked about, situation die and how skill ranks work and how you purchase skills. Of course, sometimes you would make just ability score checks if a skill doesn't apply. And it's just like making a skill check. You just roll a d20 plus any situation die. Here's the base situation die, depending on what type of action you're doing. So if you're doing a feat check, which is, an ability score check, you get a plus d4. Untrained is plus d4. Broad skill is plus d4. And specialty is plus 0. Here's the skills. The big skills up here are broad skills, and the skills under it are specialized skills. And you can see the cost here. It's how much it costs to buy a rank in that skill. Now, if you purchase more than 1 rank, it is the cost of the skill plus however many ranks you already have in the skill. So skills get more expensive to purchase as you're going up in levels. And there are levels in this game. They call them progression levels, though they work a little bit differently than D&D levels. But essentially, that's how skills work. Let's see what else we got here. And, there's a whole list of skills here, and they cover pretty much a good array of actions you would, expect in a science fiction game. A decent amount of skills. I wouldn't say it's ultra granular, but it is pretty granular. There's a lot of skills here because it is a skill-based game. Let's see. Let's skip past skills. I think we are getting into more skills. These are all just skill descriptions. Let's see. Skills. Which is probably the longest section in the book. Perks and flaws. You can take perks and flaws in this game. In order to take a perk, of course, they cost skill points. And you can take a flaw to get skill points. Or to purchase perks. And there's all different types of perks. The same kind of perks you would, or advantages you would imagine any role-playing game like this. Wealth and fortitude, and there's one that gives you an alien artifact. All kinds of stuff. So, pretty cool stuff. I definitely dig that. And I think the flaws are mixed in here with the perks. Pretty sure. Though I don't see a list of the flaws. Oh, here they are. Here's the flaws and how many skill points they give you. And of course, some flaws can are increasingly worse, and you get more points for those. So that's good stuff. Sample careers. So the careers don't really do anything. You don't have to pick a career. They basically give you a skill package, and they give you some signature equipment, or suggested equipment. I think basically what these are is to give you an idea of what to play in the game. They're almost like kits. The kits in AD&D 2nd edition, but not quite. But pretty interesting nonetheless. I guess it would kind of help you if you just want to jump into the game real quick and come up with a concept. Attributes. What is this? Okay, these are your motivations. You do have like traits and moral attitudes and stuff, and this is basically this is a really interesting part of Alternity, and this is essentially kind of like your alignment, and it's a pretty good system. So you pick like your moral attitude, which is kind of like alignment. Then you also pick character traits, and these kind of describe your character in very just one word things like aggressive, energetic, friendly, whatnot. And the moral attitude's pretty good too. You have anti-authority, apathetic, conformist, corrupt, despicable, ethical, gallant, honorable, just, and selfish. There's more. Unscrupulous, virtuous, and worldly. And I think those are pretty cool, actually. Achievements. So here's the achievement levels. So like I said, there are levels in this game. And if you look right here, I'm going to zoom in on this achievement track. This will be on your character sheet. And essentially, the way this works is you need to get to the next number to level up. So at first, to get to the first... the first one will tell you what your first goal is to get to level 2. So you need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 achievement points to get to level 2. Then you would erase all those and start over again in circle 2, and now you're level 2. And now you would need 7, and so forth and so forth. So achievement points, you earn 1 to 3 in a session, so that gives you an idea. You could earn, potentially, if you did a really good job, you get 1 or 2 more. Of course, in the Game Master's Guide, it gives you information how to, award those. And essentially, what leveling up does is it gives you more skill points. And you get a certain number of skill points based on however many achievement points it took you to get to that level. So first level, to get to first to second level, takes 6 points. And when you level up to level 2, you have 6 skill points to, buy things. So you can store the skill points for later. You can improve your skills. You can purchase new skills. You can purchase rank benefits. Purchase last resort points, which I still hadn't seen the rules and what those do. Again, I think they're kind of like fate points. And we'll go look at the index because I didn't see that. You can also get achievement benefits, and you have to be a certain level. And based on what your profession is, you would look here, and it will tell you what level you're able to increase, get certain level achievements. And level achievements give you different things. You can get an action check bonus. You can get extra actions, action check increase, ability score increase, fatigue rating. You can up your fatigue, mortal, or stun ratings. You can get monetary awards, new perks, remove a flaw. You can also raise an ability score. Did I already say that? I think I did. But yeah, ability score increase. Okay. But you have to be a certain level in order to do that. And then it costs a certain amount of points, I believe. Goods and services. Of course, this is the equipment section. This is how much money you would technically start with depending on your profession. And, of course, there is progress levels, and kind of like in GURPS, which we haven't talked about GURPS yet on this channel, but sometime we will. Like in GURPS or a lot of, generic kind of like science fiction or generic role-playing systems, they have these progress levels that determine what the technology level is. So in this game, it goes from 0 Stone Age all the way up to 10 Far Future. And it describes in detail here what each of these progress levels mean. And so your game master would tell you, what the campaign setting is and what the progress level is. And that would put a cap on what kind of equipment you could buy, what technology is available, basically. And of course, there's a lot of good stuff here. All the kind of things you need, all kinds of personal equipment. And funny enough, in these science fiction games, I like to look how outdated a lot of this stuff is, but I haven't actually even looked to see how dated this stuff is, but I bet you a lot of it is. And that'd be kind of fun to look through. Let's see, and of course, we want to get to the good stuff, all the weapons. Always like this picture of these like Space Marine dudes walking up on this portal. Very, very cool. Different services here and how much you would get paid. Computers and all the rules for computers. I'm sure that this is all probably pretty dated too. Yeah, dated. But still cool. Computers have a lot of rules here about you can get different programs and you can upgrade your computers. And all that's really cool if you want to go for like a computer heavy character or something. I think it's cool to give them a lot of extra stuff to do. Robots here. Some robot rules. It's a pretty short section on robots. And, of course, spaceship computers. And weapons and armor. That's a cool picture. There's melee weapons. And some really cheesy art here that looks like it came out of the 80s, not the late 90s, but that's cool. Ranged weapons of all different time periods. And I'm pretty sure they released also a book for like equipment and stuff for this game also. Oh, it's worth talking about the. We didn't really go into detail. We might not have gotten to the combat section yet, but essentially the way combat works is you make an action check, and that determines who goes first in the round. And then you would roll a skill check, see if you hit or not. And if you hit, depending on how well you scored, depends on what kind of damage you did. And if you look at the damage ratings here, they're just like in skill ratings, there's ordinary, good, and amazing or exceptional. And that determines what kind of damage you do. And it has a damage code. So D4, wound damage, or stun damage, or mortal damage, or whatnot. So, and it is, sorry, blanked out there. It is different types of damage dice, just like in D&D. Variable damage. Let's see what else we got. Heavy weapons. Armor. Armor's always good. And here's all the different types of armor. Vehicles, and here's all the vehicle rules. And these are just the all the different vehicles available in the base book here. I know they have another book of vehicles, and they have another book for spaceships. I think the other vehicles are just in the equipment book, but they have a ship book as well. But there are ships in here, and all the rules for ship combat and vehicle combat, which I am not familiar with and did not read very thoroughly when I was looking through it this afternoon, but I'm pretty sure it pretty much plays out just like like skill checks with your characters and combat with your characters. Ship combat, you have compartments, and you have to basically deal damage to the compartments of the ship. And here's an example of a character sheet for your ship. And so you can see the different compartments here. And of course, that allows the player characters to interact more with the ship when, the ship is involved in a situation. And an example ship here. Though I think it only has this one ship in the book. But it does break down the statistics for a ship, I'm pretty sure. So that's that. Mutants, just like we were talking about, if your game master allows you to take mutations. Mutations cost a certain amount of points. And then, of course, being a mutant would be your species, I believe. And then you roll some dice here to determine how many mutation points you have. You also have drawbacks as well to your mutations. And you can spend points to up your mutations. I thought, anyways. Oh, you randomly roll, I guess. Okay. And then you can, I guess you can use the points to make your mutations better. Gotcha. That's interesting. So a little Gamma World-ish. Some cool looking mutants. And of course, drawbacks, like I was saying, there are drawbacks to having mutations. Psionics. And psionics are a separate profession. I think there's only one psionic profession, that's mind walkers. And psionics work just like skills. They're skills. I think you have to be a mind walker to use psionics. And then you also have energy points you have to spend to cast psionics, but they work just like skills. You make a skill check and have to expend energy to cast them. Always like this piece of art here too. This psionic alien like figuring out the crime through his psychic power. And this chick looks extremely late 90s here. This one's really cool too. This was probably my favorite piece in the book, actually. Cybernetics, cybertech. So you can have cybernetics in the game. Of course, it's another option. It states up front that, cybernetics are expensive, so your player's probably not going to start any. But if it's a game where a lot of people would have cybernetics, your game master might allow you to start with some. And of course, cybernetics are basically like you would think in Shadowrun or what, Cyberpunk. And you can have skin, body plating and blades coming out of your hands and all that good stuff. Nano programs. And, wow, that's basically it for Alternity, the Player's Handbook. Yeah. So here's all the compiled tables, which I remember referencing a lot playing this back in the day. And, yeah, that is it for Alternity, the Player's Handbook. And we were going to look at something. We were going to look at the... what were they called? Last Resort points, because I totally missed those in the book. Last Resort points. Where are they at? Last Resort points. 38. Let's look at 38 first. Last Resort. Okay. Basically, last resort points are used when a hero wants to try to avoid a bad event or make it more likely that something good for him will occur. See last resort points on page 59. Okay, so it's basically what I thought it was. 59. Last resort points. Like skill points, last resort points can be stored and spent. A last resort point can be spent to alter the result of any skill or action check, changing the degree, blah blah. Only one last resort point can be spent to alter a skill check. Okay. Oh, okay. So a hero who wants to prove his success can spend a point to change a good result into an amazing result, or a hero who wants to hinder an opponent can change the opponent's good result into an ordinary result. Okay, that's kind of cool, I guess. Good deal. All right, well, that's basically it for Alternity. Hope you guys have enjoyed this look at Alternity, the science fiction role-playing game by TSR, Wizards of the Coast, or however you want to look at it. I'm a little bit out of it tonight, so I was kind of stumbling over words and whatnot, but hopefully you guys enjoyed it anyways. If you did, give me a thumbs up. Let me know if you played Alternity. Let me know what you thought of it. Or, whatever. It seems like a lot of people just kind of skipped over this game when it came out, and I kind of understand why. But I think it's a little bit of an underrated game, and I think it's a pretty good game. I think it holds up pretty well. I would like to play it again at some point just to see how it holds up. And maybe I'll do, I don't know if I'll do a full-on campaign. I don't really have time to do a full-on campaign of this game right now, but maybe sometime in the not too far future we'll do like a one-shot or something on the channel, or maybe like a mini campaign, just to see if it really does hold up to the rose-tinted glasses I have for Alternity. Anyways, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Let me know, as usual. Always feel free to contact me through my email like Jason or Phil did. I really appreciate it again, guys, for reaching out to me. It was really good talking to you guys. And hopefully we'll have Jason on the channel again, talking about maybe some old school D&D or something. Other things that are coming up this week, of course, I was supposed to play Star Trek Sojourner, but Bear is on a break this week, and that's cool. Hope you're having a good break, Bear. So no Star Trek game tonight. But tomorrow I will be on the Four Color Cafe. Of course, Brian from Gaming with ADHD will be hosting that. I don't know what we'll be talking about. I don't know if there's been a topic presented or not, but either way, I will be there with whoever else, and we'll be discussing something, and it'll be fun and good as always, so make sure to check on that. I will be simulcasting it on my channel as usual at 7 o'clock my time, which is Central Time. And then Thursday, we're going to be continuing our discussion about Lord of the Rings. Me, Andy, Events are catching up reading Lord of the Rings. Of course, I fell behind a little bit because I was sick last week and couldn't read. So we'll be reading we'll be discussing the second half of the Fellowship of the Ring. So come check that out. And then Sunday, hopefully, if all goes well, we'll be doing session 2 of Old School Essentials, my Old School Essentials campaign. And I enjoyed the first session, and we haven't played in, I guess it's been about a month now. But we are going to play that, hopefully. But yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed the video. We'll catch you guys next time. Y'all have a good week. Peace. See you later.